What's up, guys? Today we're back. We're going to be doing a video on hunting pressure, how to avoid it, and how to find spots that hunting pressure might not be in. We're at this public land here. It's mostly marsh. There's a lot of tags mixed in, so a lot of bedding for these deer, a lot of bedding opportunities. So right now I'm going to get set up, get my hip waders on, and hopefully make it into this public where I've got a few spots marked on my onX that I want to be checking out. Definitely recommend e-scouting before you actually walk into a property. It's going to tell you a lot, especially when you get in, and it helps you eye up things that you may see e-scouting that align with boots on the ground scouting, and that helps you get a good eye for other potential good public areas. So I consider it practice for e-scouting anyhow, but without further ado, let's get into it. So one other thing I highly recommend is on your onX in the bottom right corner, there's going to be a tracker icon, and turning that on will trace exactly where you've walked, and it'll leave a date. You can name the track. Some people use this for blood trails. I love to use it for scouting because not only does it show, trails I walk on, I'm also leaving specific points along that trail where I might run into rubs or scrapes, whatever the case may be. Food. There's many different icons you can use to mark. That tracker also allows me to come back during season, view where I've walked, stay away from that area. If that's a main deer trail that I was walking, I don't want to be walking on that going in unless I know that there's not going to be deer in that area. Just from that walk in, you guys could probably tell it's going to hold a lot of people out of here. So it's going to be loud getting in here, so there might be another way in here. It might be a little bit quieter. I'll have to see on my way out. Being that difficult to get back in here tells me there shouldn't be that much hunter sign back here, and if there is, it shouldn't be much. For surely I'm confident in finding some good sign. Kind of move towards those points I've left on my onX from e-scouting and see if it lines up where I find the sign in the woods here. So we just ran into our first bed. I've already marked it on my onX, but I just wanted to give you guys a little look at what it's going to look like when you do find one. And there's going to be a little patch of high ground with some rubs around it. And there's not many rubs to begin with, I don't believe, because there's not much living, twigs, branches, little trees in here. They're all dead. So I found 2 rubs real close to this bed, and then there's hair. And the hair is the dead giveaway and the scat around this bed. And then there's some other little pieces of high ground right around this area where it's all matted down, using this area for sure. Just ran into another bedding area where I believe this one's a little bit bigger of a buck just because the rubs are slightly higher. However, not the buck I'm looking for. I see another smaller rub over here, but I'm just going to keep walking. I'm walking a creek line right now. This creek line seems to be holding a lot of beds because whatever's coming to them from the south will be making a bunch of noise coming through that creek where they can get out of here. Off to my right, it's just super wet, and I'm on a slim patch of high ground. I have a feeling I'm not going to have trouble finding a bigger buck bed. I feel like he just might be deeper back in, where these could be satellite bucks bedding here, where if they spook, run towards the big buck, spook him, he's out of here before anybody even sees him. So I walked out from where I was along that creek edge, and this is still kind of along the creek. Ran into a dry area, some bigger rubs, and there's beds here as well. So I marked this as a buck bed. Definitely a bigger buck than what sign I was finding inside that little thicket there. Where we come into this open taller grass, more, I shouldn't say big, but definitely a bigger buck than what was using that edge I walked. I'm walking the edge of the swamp here where it comes into hardwoods, much thicker hardwoods to be exact. And there's a couple little rubs in here, but I just found a good clump of deer hair. This swamp is pushing out further from any access point, so this seems like it's going to be a good area. So I have a feeling if there is one bedded out in this swamp, he's going to be coming in here where there's oaks. So sure enough, I got back here by this creek, and these tags started popping up. And I know from past experience that deer love to rub on these tags. And sure enough, right on this trail here, cuts through, there's a decent rub. Nothing too eye-catching. It's kind of hard to see from where I was walking through. But the sign's starting to pick up. And as we walk on this trail, we're actually going further away from that private. So it could lead to some bigger sign. So I just walked this trail up to these down trees where I found a bed right in front of it, right here. And right next to it. It's a very good rub compared to the ones we were finding. So I do think we're coming up on some better sign. Still not huge sign, which is very surprising because this is great deer habitat. So I'm gonna keep exploring back around this area with all these oaks, thick cover, bedding, there's water. I'd have to assume there's more deer bedded in here than just this one. So I'm kind of running into a dead end here where there's not much sign. I just ran into a small rub behind me, but they're not telling me anything. I believe they're just early season beds with how old these rubs are. So with that being said, I'm gonna be heading over to a point I marked e-scouting, and it's an oxbow of this creek in front of me. I'm gonna go check that out and see if when we get closer to that oxbow, the sign starts picking up. So I've just found a really good rub as we march towards this oxbow, and it's actually facing the oxbow. So I wouldn't be surprised if when we get there, there's more rubs about this size. So for those of you that don't know what an oxbow is, it's where a peninsula of land meets the creek, but the creek or river or any waterway makes a U around that land, and that gives that buck a lot of area around a bed like that to hear something coming and then look the other direction to see something coming the other way. We're standing on the point of the oxbow right now, and there's a rub here, but it's not signifying he's huge. It's either leading me to believe that there's more pressure back here than I actually anticipated, or it's just not where a big buck wants to be. Don't see how that'd be the case, so I'm kind of leaning towards the pressure. There's a couple posted private signs across the creek here. I thought there'd be more sign than this on the point, so I'm just going to keep walking this creek line back, and where I think that human pressure might dissolve is where I'm going to give it a little bit more attention and look for better sign. So we've just transitioned into low ground, into hardwoods. Plenty of oak trees in here. Ran into this rub, but still not finding the sign I'd like to. It's really starting to make me think that there's trout fishermen coming back here quite often, or somebody's hunting back here. I did run into some reflective tape that was wrapped around the tree, but it seemed really old. Doesn't mean that they're not using it anymore. However, it does give me an idea that they could possibly have left the area. Old soda bottle, really old, it's buried. Old sign, some fresh rub. Hopefully I can get off this travel corridor for humans to get back on this creek and fish. So I've just kind of made an educated guess. Based off of where I was, I could tell there is definitely human travel through that woods. And I came to where if these deer were bedded downwind into this little thicket here, they'd definitely be able to smell something walking through that woods. So I found this rub, and this rub seems to be only the beginning of what I'll find when I keep walking back into this thicket. So I did find a really long hair in one of these beds by that rub. Probably had their winter coat on when they were bedded in here during the rut, or even after, before all this grass got knocked down. But you can tell they're still traveling through here because there is fresh tracks. Standing over this bed too right now, I can smell a must of buck. And if you've ever killed a buck during the rut, you know what I'm talking about. So as I think the sun's heating the ground up here, it's making that scent rise. I'm getting a big whiff of rotten buck here. So I just got done walking in about knee-deep water. Came up to this little high spot. These rubs popped up on this bed. And with the scat in the bed, the rubs, it's definitely a buck bed, undoubtedly. If we analyze the rub above my waist, this is broken off in the right area. This thick, nasty swamp where it's not easy for a human to get into. So I'm currently sitting in this buck bed where I've found good amounts of hair, a lot of hair, and that tells me he's using this a lot. From really long pieces of hair to really short pieces of hair. There's rubs all the way around, and then there's exit trails behind me. If you can see this tree, it creates this little knoll in between that swamp and high ground. He's using this to get up out of the water, and then using these exit routes to escape based off of where his danger is coming from. So I'm gonna mark this as a buck bed on Onyx and keep scouting the surrounding area. So I wanted to give a little game plan here of how I might possibly hunt that deer. He's bedded there with a northerly wind, with the wind to his back, pushing all that scent from the human trail to him, and then keeping an eye out to the south, kind of where I showed you when I was in his bed. It faces out into the marsh, and there's a couple dead ash trees that look like they might be huntable. We're gonna have to go check them out. And on my way to these trees, I'm also gonna be checking the ground for tracks, the size of the tracks, and also more rut sign. So we've gotten pretty close to the tree I wanted to get up in and possibly hunt. In this bed right here, you can see every tree that's huntable. This definitely seems like more of a satellite buck with the smaller trees that are rubbed, and the little bed that's here. It's not a big bed by any means, but I did find hair in it. Might have to do a double take on where I'm going to be able to hunt this buck. My guess is there's a tree back in there that I'm going to go take a gander at and see if there's any places to get a shot off in there. So I've just found a tree I could possibly get set up in. It's about 75 yards away from that satellite buck bed I found. The access is not going to be easy, especially with spooking other deer. I'm going to mark this as a stand location, but I'm also going to see on my way back if I can find a food source that they might be hitting where I could set up there and possibly catch them, these bucks coming to food instead of hunting them in their beds. With how much security covers in here, I have a good feeling they'll be moving during the day. Chance you got to take, and who knows, it could just be an observation setting up in the food source, but it's always worth a shot rather than coming in here and busting him out right away. Observe if he ends up moving that way and I can get a shot, perfect. But if it fails, you know, I didn't learn much. The next time I come with a good wind, I'm going to be setting up closer to the bedding area. So I've just found a nice tree to set up in. It's a really nice pinch point where that bedding area comes into this high ground behind me. There's a little knoll here. There's a really beat down deer trail on. And it tells me they're going in and out of this. So to get set up in this tree, I'm gonna have to come from behind me where the public access is, cross 2 creeks and get up in here where hopefully the deer aren't bedded on this side. You know, I could run into a couple beds, but I don't think those deer are gonna push that deer out of here about 150 yards away. The tree is definitely a good possibility here. So we're back at the car now, and although we didn't find much of what I wanted to find, it's still a good spot to have in my arsenal for this upcoming bow season. Definitely not the biggest sign I have logged so far from the properties I've walked, but it is definitely sign, and it helps you practice reading that sign and setting up in a spot to bring you success. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. There's not much going on with hunting right now. Our Off the Roost series is coming up this spring for turkeys. However, if you guys learned something, leave a like, subscribe, comment what you'd like to see next, and we'll see you in the next video.